Welcome back. I'm Sean Hancock from Metrology.guru, and I'm here with Jonathan, who is a digital artist and the creator of LineRender 9000, the DAZ Studio plugin which takes the unique approach to generating line artwork from DAZ Studio 3D scenes using a new non-destructive parameter called color IDs. In session 1 we demonstrated how to pull believable artwork from hard materials such as a room using this parameter. In session 2, we are focusing on creating line art from people, which has its own set of challenges due to the way characters are modeled, and more specifically hair. In part 1 of session 2, we demonstrated how to use the various settings for the cameras in LineRender 9000 to create good line art for a character. In this part 2, we're going to focus on refining the hair and using lighting to create shadows to help set the mood of your artwork. So let's get into the session.
So I think this is looking pretty good overall. I think we need to start giving some attention to the hair. So let's go back to DAZ and take a look at the transparency map on the hair that we're using.
All right, and we have the hair selected and the transparency maps. There's only 2 maps that we're using in this particular hair. We're using the color map, which is the diffuse color, which looks like so in my lower right screen. And we have the transparency map, or the opacity strength as it uses, called that. So would you like me to open that in Photoshop?
Yeah, let's open that one up in Photoshop.
Alrighty. So there's the transparency map for this particular hair set.
Okay. So if we examine the transparency map, we can see that the white parts are what shows in the resulting image, and the black parts are invisible. So if we zoom in a little bit closer at the edges of the hair, we can see that it kind of fades into black, and that's exactly the same effect that we're getting in our color ID render, and really in the main render as well. But it's not really a cartoon look. So what I've found is that if I can simplify this texture to be all white and black, then it ends up being a little bit more bold colors, which is what you tend to see in like cartoon art, where the hair is not as detailed as what we're getting out in the output of the renders.
Right.
Do you have the image that I sent you? So if you want to just pull that on top of this in Photoshop. So typically what I do when I'm playing around with the hair transparency maps is I'll end up making a greatly simplified image, sort of like this, where what I did was trace the main outline of the hair transparency, and then once I had the shape using like the lasso tool, then I just fill it in with all white on a black background, and then I end up with a transparency map that's very, very similar to the original, just greatly simplified and completely black and white. There's not this fade out that's happening anymore.
All right, so this is basically just a black and white image. There's no grayscale in it at all.
That's correct. So sometimes this requires a bit of experimentation. I've tended to just bite the bullet and draw it in using Photoshop, like I said, using a lasso tool. In this particular image's case, what I did is I used the lasso tool to kind of outline around one of the strands, and then I duplicated it a bunch of different times. So it's the exact same image a bunch of times. You can see I didn't line it up perfectly either, but that's fine. Let's give it a shot in DAZ Studio and see what it looks like.
All right. So in DAZ Studio, what we're going to do is we're going to replace this map.
You're going to want to select all of the textures in the hair with the exception of cap.
So all of the textures in the hair. So it's been replaced with your simplified map. All right.
Yep.
Load
Let's
up
give it a whirl.
LR9K. And which camera is this time? Same thing? Main camera?
Yeah, so it should be main camera pass number 2, pass number 3, and pass number 5.
All right.
Yep, that's correct.
So let's give it a shot. Main camera pass. Main camera lines.
Okay, so if we take a look at the edges around the hair, like let's zoom in a little bit closer there and take a look at what's happening there.
Wow. Nice lines through the arm.
So, yep. So now we're getting kind of a much better look, I think. You can see that the strands are only really showing up at the edges of the hair now, and we're kind of getting a nice outline. We could probably play with the transparency map a bit more to simplify it a little bit more, because the outlines are taking up more than more of the hair than I would maybe like around the edges. Like this wouldn't be the way that a inker would ink it in a cartoon drawing, really.
Okay.
It would be pretty. I think it would be pretty passable with very dark hair, with like a brunette hairstyle, which luckily we have, so we could probably get away with this. But I think that the transparency map that we ended up with is still a little bit too detailed because of all the little strands that we're getting. And we can sort of see that if we switch over to the main camera, the color render for the color ID pass, we can see kind of how fine the hair edges are when we're zoomed into the same area, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Although, is that, I'm second guessing myself, is that different than the previous color render?
So there's the current main camera lines, and here's the previous camera lines.
Okay, yeah. So we can see that we did indeed solve that transparency. We kind of ended up making her hair a lot fuller looking. So overall, not too bad.
Yeah.
We could simplify the texture a little bit more for the transparency map. This tends to be a bit of an experimentation session for me in order to get a good look. Of course, once you've created the transparency map, then you have it and you can always use it for that hair model. It's a little bit time intensive, but it's the best technique that I've found to get good outlines.
Right.
All right, let's take a look at what all of the line art looks like when composited together.
Okay. So main camera lines here. Fresnel reflected V here. I'm just going to zoom out so we can get the overall idea of what's going on, what's happening here. And the edge blend lines here. That looks pretty good. That looks nice.
Yep. So I think color ends up filling this out a little bit more than what we have. But thus far, what we've done is kind of nuance the line artwork, and this is typically the way that I'll start if I'm working on a character portrait. Is I'll keep playing with the lines and keep tweaking the settings. As you can see, we only ended up with 3 different renders overlaid on top of each other in order to get a and to get the line work. And we spent a little bit of time tweaking the lines, but we could certainly spend more if we wanted in order to continue to refine and get better lines. So it's not like there's a ton of different settings that we're playing with. It's more like we have 3 different renders and we're adjusting the settings until we start getting the lines looking better and better until it starts getting the look that we want.
Yeah.
All right. So the next thing that I would do for this type of character picture is now play a little bit with the lighting and add some shadows into the picture as well.
Okay.
So the camera we're going to use for that is going to be the shadow opacity cam, but we need to do a couple of things in order to get things working. Most notably, we need to actually add lighting to the scene, which right now we do not have.
Mm-hmm.
So we can probably get away with a single distant light. For a cartoon style image, I think that's usually sufficient. So we can create a new, or a new spotlight even would work as well. A new spotlight might be a little bit more pronounced light, which maybe is what we want. So let's do that.
There's the spotlight.
Yeah, I think you want to back it up considerably.
There we go. That's better.
Yep.
All right then. Where would you like the light coming from?
Maybe we have it come from a slight angle instead of front on. Well, where's our camera? Well, I guess we don't really have a camera anymore.
Can we look through any of the cameras that you provide?
I think we probably want to create our own viewport camera now, or use main camera actually. Let's look through main camera.
All right. Oh, sorry. Through main camera.
Yep. Let's rotate it a little bit to be a little bit closer to where we were with the previous image. Yeah, it was something like that. Okay, so we got really, really dark shadows over on the left there.
But we haven't moved the light yet. So do you want?
That's true.
So do you want the light coming from her left?
Yeah, I think that would look good, and maybe coming from above a little bit as well.
Okay. So let's see what that looks like. Not bad. We have some shadows there, and we have some highlights. Would you like to change it some more?
Yeah, let's zoom the spotlight out a little bit,
Okay.
so that way we have a little bit of a wider spread.
Okay.
Yeah, that should make the shadows a little bit less drastic. Yeah, we still have some shadows, but I think this is good. Okay. So let's kick off LR9K auto render again. This time we need to enable pretty much all of the passes, but we need to pay attention to our settings in the shadow opacity cam. So
render lights and shadows.
not on this one. This one's the color ID pass.
All right.
So on the shadow opacity cam, we will want to have that one enabled, and we will want to switch the renderer to 3D line render 9000.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, let's change pixel samples X and Y to be 8 and line edge threshold down to at least 0.4, maybe 0.35.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the rest is fine the way that it is. So let's, do we need to change the file prefix again?
Yes, we do. Thank you. What would I do without you?
All right. All right, let's click render and see what we end up with.
So there are only a few cameras that are going to take advantage of the shadows. Is that correct?
That's right. Up until this point, we've been doing, all of our passes have explicitly ignored lights and shadows. And that's because the cameras themselves don't support them, so there's no need to render them out anyway.
Okay.
So this is my typical workflow. I'll work with just the line art aspects with cameras that don't even pay attention to lighting or textures for the most part, until I nuance the line art to looking pretty good, and then I start adding in textures and adding in lighting and shadows in order to create the full effect.
So we brought all the images into Photoshop, but since we're rendering from a slightly different angle, all of the rest of the previous renders are irrelevant. So we're only going to focus on these renders that we've done now. So what we have here is the Tune Two-Tone Cam, main camera, demonstrating the color IDs, main camera lines, the Fresnel reflected V, the Fresnel lines, the shadow opacity cam, the shadow opacity lines, the edge blend, and the edge blend lines.
Okay. One of the things that I habitually do is with the shadow opacity cam, I merge the opacity cam with the line render typically. The reason for that is that if you just take a look at the main cam render, it's kind of aliased pretty badly. And if you add in the lines, it kind of anti-aliases the output. So yeah, I tend to merge those two together into a single image, or at least just have them both in the same output. So let's take a look at the shadow opacity cam alongside the other line outputs.
So edge blend lines here, Fresnel reflected V here, and main camera lines here. Wow.
Yep. So now lighting is starting to play a role in the scene, and we can see that.
Yeah.
We could obviously play around with the lighting, but that's sort of the beauty of this product. We completely changed our camera angle. One click, we had the exact same settings from a different angle. We could do the same thing with posing and all that. Some of the things that are kind of nice about doing cartoon style art from DAZ Studio using line render is that all your settings are there. It's very easy to do this, very easy to change camera angles and poses and all those types of things. And you can create a completely different feel of the final scene by changing your lighting and changing your pose, as we all know. So So here the main shadows that we got are kind of behind the knee, behind the front leg from our perspective, and then kind of the back end of the skirt area of the dress, a little bit on their back as well. Also the left, or on the image, the left side of the image for her face, and a little bit on the nose is mostly where we're seeing the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit in the hair too. But all right. So at this point, I would be, let's just say that I'm pretty happy with the line work at this point. Obviously, we could continue to refine this. Why is the skirt not getting a nice outline? Yeah, so in this particular case, our shadow opacity cam isn't like the other line outputs right now. It's not transparent and black. It's actually white and black. So we need to move the shadow opacity cam that we merged a little bit further down in the layers. That way the other lines are drawing on top of it. Alternately, we could modify that particular layer to convert the white to opacity, which would also solve our problem.
So I just moved it down to the bottom of the list.
Yep. So now our line art's looking a little bit better. We're getting our nice color ID lines, especially noticeable around the skirt, which is where I noticed that it was missing. But yeah, so here we go.
So this is an extract from a rehearsal and one of the reasons that I first contacted Jonathan. I needed to render a boxing scene and was using this model. However, I was having problems getting the look that I wanted. A lot of the details were being washed out, certain things weren't showing up. So since we were just demonstrating how to add shadows to a figure, I thought it might be appropriate to include this extract in the thought process of adding shadows to a hard edge scene to bring out the details.
And maybe let's get some shadows in here. That will help. So do we have any lights in here? I don't think
No.
so. Let's create a new distant light and then yeah, change the camera deal. So from default camera, let's change it to distant light up in there. And let's give it a, oh, I guess we have all sorts of background lights. Let's get rid of all those BG lights. Let's just delete that whole node. Yeah, all right. So then I guess let's make distant light up in the, let's rotate our scene upwards a little bit. Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
crap, that's a long way away.
Yeah. Hard to tell, but that's doable.
Yeah.
But, all right, let's go back to our camera, and now we should at least have some sort of light here. Camera. Okay, yeah, now we're definitely seeing. So that,
Oh yeah.
do we want it that color or do we want it that angle? I think probably not, right?
No, that's pretty.
Let's go back
I,
to distant light,
I,
rotate.
I tend to rotate it.
Yeah, maybe we have it a little bit overhead. I don't know. 'Cause this is like really long. Well, that's not bad. Okay, so let's select the properties of distant light and let's take a look at that. Um, all right, under light, what do we have? Shadow. All right, shadow type. Let's change that to like ray traced is what I usually use. And then shadow color, black is fine. Shadow intensity. I don't think we want shadow softness, shadow bias. I guess we don't care about. We might want to scale down shadow intensity a little bit. Let's maybe make it 50% and see kind of what that looks like. Um, okay, I think that's maybe all right. Um, yep, and now we're gonna disable our main camera and enable shadow opacity cam. And now we get, let's change that actually to the renderer of line render. Yep, and we need render shadows. I don't know about render lights. I don't know if that matters. I think it probably does. Okay, so let's change line width up to like 1.5 and change edge threshold to lower 0.35. Let's do the same thing as the Fresnel. Pixel samples are 5. Yeah, let's make those 6 as well. Yep. All right. Let's see how this guy looks. Okay, shadow opacity cam. All right, so I can already say that that's not what we want. Okay, so let's lines are cool though,
That's cool. Yeah, that's very interesting.
but that's not what really the effect we were after. So let's go back to DAS and let's take that shadow intensity like way down to like 10%. Let's give it another render and see what that looks like. Hey, that's looking way better.
Yeah.
Okay, so forget about the lines for a second. Let's take a look at the interesting. Okay, so here this is an interesting deal. So here we're getting all sorts of noise in our render. Um, so let's get rid of that. Let's go back to well, what's this mean? I guess this means that the light is coming from sort of behind us, right?
Or over on this side here. It depends on what's
Yeah.
being burnt out, but
Yep.
I would tend to guess that almost like an oblique.
Yeah, I'm not really in love with the shadow angle here, but that's fine. We can always change the angle. Let's get the let's get the texture and stuff right. Actually, let's change the angle too. So back to Dev Studio. Let's pick a different angle on that light. Maybe a little bit more overhead, so we get more of a top down. You can only rotate. Yeah, let's try. Yeah,
Maybe
okay.
something like this.
Yeah, let's try that. Okay, and then yeah, that's good. So then let's change the camera back to the main camera or default camera. And then back to auto render and go to the shadow opacity cam settings and use color ID materials. Yeah, let's try that. Why did I do that? I don't want the
Yeah.
displacement. I don't want the bumps. I want it to just render flat shadows
Okay.
because the light was scattering all over those bumpy surfaces, and that's what was
Yeah.
giving us all that noise. All right, let's take a look at that. All right, so it's shadow opacity cam 2. Looks like we don't have hardly any shadows in that render. Interesting. Okay, okay. And then take a look at the shadow opacity cam 2, like the main render for it. I just want to see what that looks like. It looks like an all white render to me, but
This one here.
yeah.
Pretty much.
Okay. Let's all right, so that maybe is fine. Let's go back to Data Studio and let's up the shadow intensity because we put it down to 10.
Pretty low, yeah.
Let's bring it up to like 30. Let's just see what that looks like.
It's burnt it right out, it looks like.
Yeah.
There's the revised, there's the previous, so there's almost no difference.
Yeah.
And the lines 2 and 3. Here's this one, and here's the next one. So they're almost the same as well.
Okay. Let's keep bumping
Intensity?
yeah, let's keep bumping that intensity up.
Let's try 65 maybe.
Yeah. And there's probably just not a whole lot that's actually catching shadows from the angle that it's in. That's probably what's going on. If we picked a different angle, we might get shadows of the ropes onto the thing, which would be kind of a cool look. Or even that corner thing.
Yeah.
It's really hard to tell from the angle that the light is, but that's looking better. So the shadow opacity cam lines is looking pretty good. I'm not seeing the main render, but maybe I'm not. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Definitely cool, actually. Yeah, where's the
Where's the main render?
there it is. Yeah, you had it over to the
Is
right.
that it?
Yeah, that
This one
guy.
here?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's it. That's pretty cool. Let's okay.
Yeah, it is nice.
All
Yeah.
right, so let's pull that guy in. Yep. And then let's add in the lines too. So usually what I do is I'll use both the so I'll usually merge those two down to each other because the lines sort of anti-alias the shadows.
Okay.
So yeah, merge those two together. Okay, and now we can do some cool layer effect here.
I usually just run through to see what
Yeah,
it's
pick
going to give. That's kind of.
like a is there really no um that's kind of
Yeah, that's bizarre.
it's kind of cool. Like
Yeah.
that's a cool like
Yeah.
look right there. It's not quite. I mean, it like loses so much of that other line work, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like if you imagine like if you had a character in there
Yeah.
with the shadows affecting the character, that would look slick.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one would think that like hard light or soft light would be fine. But like just for so let's pick like hard light for example. Yeah, do that and then change like the opacity of this layer down to like 80%. Or yeah,
Nice. That's cool. That is very cool.
cool. So yeah, nice. All right, let's get some color in there now.
Okay.
All right, so back to Daz Studio, and then let's open up that LR9K tune camera down at the bottom of the content library where it says LR9K tune camera. Just double click
Yeah.
that guy. All right, now let's kick off the auto render again. All right, let's try it. All right, so yeah, change this from the two-tone cam to the tune camera. Enable it. It's probably fine to leave it at 3D light for this.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just give this guy a whirl. I'm sure it's gonna look ugly AF, but we'll give it.
Turn
Oh,
off the
yeah,
shadow opacity.
yeah. Let's turn that guy off.
Okay.
You know, actually, we should hide that plane for the
This
window.
one here.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
make that guy invisible. The eye icon. Just thought. Yeah. All right.
Re-render.
No, let's just see what it looks like. I'm sure it looks like Garbaggio, so let's fix that first.
Tune camera.
Yeah. All right. Yep.
Ooh,
Well,
not
it's
bad.
not
Not bad.
terrible.
Except for the plane, but not bad.
Yeah, actually. Okay, so let's
And I like the shadows on the ropes. That's cool.
yeah, we probably don't want that, but yeah. All right, so let's go back to Dash a Studio and let's go to the Tune Camera options.
Parameters.
Yep. Options, parameters, same thing. Okay. Let's go to Tune. All right, clamps and clamp blend. Let's fiddle with that a little bit.
So what does clamps and clamp blend do?
I think clamps is like the number of how often colors get segmented into different colors. Like so, like we'll blend it together. So like let's set clamps down to 2, for example.
So almost like a posturization effect?
Yeah. Set that to 2, and let's just turn clamp blend up to like 0.4. Let's just experiment with that. Um, Under distant light, let's change that setting, and then let's go to light, and then let's change the light intensity. Um, yeah, let's make that intensity like 150 to brighten up the image a little bit. And then, um, yep, let's kick off the auto render again. And we're going to make a change here to under renderer here. Let's change it to the LR9K rendering script. And then under render shadows, uncheck that guy. And the lines are pretty much a throwaway for us, but let's change the line width to be consistent. Let's do like 1.5 just in case it looks okay. And then line edge threshold, we probably want to be up. So move that threshold to like 0.65. Let's try that. All right, let's give this guy a whirl. I feel like it's still a little bit on the dark side for me, but we could bump up the light intensity up to like 200% and see if that gives us a brighter image. I'm not convinced that it has been, but it does look quite a bit brighter.
So here's before, here's after.
It's interesting that I told it not to render shadows, and it did anyway. But it is quite a bit brighter.
It is a lot brighter, yeah.
But that's okay. That's fine. I don't know why it's being a pain in the butt with the shadows right now. Probably, I don't know. But okay, so
CNIDs maybe?
maybe actually it's rendering light and not shadow. Anyway, this is. I think this is okay. Let's see here, clamps and stuff. I don't know. I think it's fine. Let's get that in there with the other with the
All
line
right.
work and see how this bad boy looks when we bring it in there.
At the bottom, you mean?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. Okay.
Nice.
Feel like it could be brightened up considerably. Oh, that's kind of a neat.
That's kind of neat, yeah.
Hmm.
It's too bad the purple is. I guess it doesn't really make much difference. It's just the light coming through the skylights.
That's kind of an interesting effect too. That vivid light or vivid light, the one before.
Yeah, yeah, this one here, yeah.
Kind of interesting. Um, so like, I guess what I would probably do is probably have it normal and then like brightened up. Like I'd probably color adjust this to be like a brighter look to it, or get a better render from DAZ. But yeah, let's just use brighten contrast to kind of be done for today. But yeah, let's just brighten it and see what it looks like. Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah, I think that looks pretty okay.
Yeah.
I think that the color, yeah, it's all right. It's all right. Like a lot of those photoreal textures still come through. I wonder if we went. Let's go back to DAZ and play with that clamp setting, and let's like lower the clamp setting a little bit and see if we can't get it to be um, more toony. So let's make clamps like 1,
Mm-hmm.
and let's make clamp blend lower to like point. Let's try 0.2 there. All right, let's give this a guy a whirl and see if we get anything better. Oh, it was still dark. Should we? Let's update the lumina, whatever it's called. Yeah, let's try that. See if that guy wants to now be brighter for us. You can also bring in like an ambient light to brighten it up too.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing like a tune type of thing, it's good. And there's a lot of tricks that we can do. We're trying not to play with the underlying textures too much. All right, what does our tune render look like now? Oh, there it is. Interesting.
A little washed out. Maybe we went a little bit too high with the intensity.
Yeah,
I think you'd get a better render if we brought the lighting back down to one. We were at 150 and we went to 200. So
yeah. I think the clamps blending is probably messing us up a little bit too.
you think so? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I think the lighting could probably be brought down a little bit. Um,
Well, let's just try that quick render then. So since we're here, let's bring it back to 150.
yep, is 4. Um,
Yeah, you're bringing back some details.
yeah,
You're getting the handles back, at least a little bit handles back on the locker rooms.
yeah. Maybe we change the lighting intensity back up to or back to 100.
Yeah.
Feel like we're losing a lot of detail there. All right, let's go back to the tune camera and let's play with some settings there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's turn the clamp blend up to like 80. Let's try 80. See what that does.
Point 8 or 80.
Point 0.8. Yep. All right, let's give that a whirl. A whirly whirl. All right.
Look at the difference between. So the clamp blend changes the value, the intensity of the light a lot, obviously.
Well, then we change it down to 100 and it
Yeah,
did this. I think we did
yeah,
both.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But you've picked up a ton of detail.
yeah, certainly did.
Like this is totally washed. So what about changing the blend to?
I think it's the light intensity that did it.
You think so? Yeah.
Yeah, let's just add like an ambient light in. I saw it before. Yeah, here we go. Uber environment to base.
You want this one?
Yeah, let's do that guy. Okay, let's find that in the scene selection. Select that guy. Let's make him a little bit bigger so it doesn't clip the wall. The scale and just like bump him up a little bit, just the overall scale. Just a little bit till we see the wall again.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
Yep. Okay, cool. And then let's go to light
Mm-hmm.
and intensity 100%. Okay. And then environment mode. Change that guy to, there should be like an ambient setting under environment mode there. Ambient, no ray tracing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's give this guy a whirl and see what we get in the. Hopefully that should just brighten it up a bit. So like if I were going for like a for reals, like good looking tune thing, I'd probably simplify these textures because in a lot of cases there are simple colors, So then like I do like that brick look. Anyway, let's see what we ended up with here. I mean, overall, it doesn't look that bad. Is this it?
Not bad. Yep.
Okay, so we could take the ambient. Yeah, let's take the intensity to like intensity. Let's make it half as powerful. Let's make it 50%. Let's see what this guy looks like now. I'm hoping to just get like a happy medium between like that like it's got that nice detail in it without being too washed out. That is looking
Nice.
good.
Very nice. Look at that. Look at the difference between that one. Okay, so we started here. Well, we didn't start there, but that's the last one that we kind of liked. And this one, and this one, and then this one.
All right, let's try that one. Let's try that one as a background in the line art one. All right, let's take out that.
Oh, yeah.
I think that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Overall, I think it looks pretty good. Not bad for a little bit of work.
Wow.
Let's check the lines. Let's open up that lines. Actually, sorry. Take out, like, just make the toon cam invisible here in this one, and let's drag in the toon camera lines and see what that looks like with the render we did. In some cases, it can be interesting. Well, it's kind of an interesting effect. I like it.
I like it. I like it a lot. It's brought back the detail that you would have seen in the
Yeah.
in the posters instead of just seeing empty frames,
Yeah.
which makes you wonder what the heck's what is that?
Yeah, and you could probably get a decent look with like using the two-tone toon cam with that, so get kind of that sort of effect with it being less discriminatory on color.
So Jonathan demonstrated how you can use lights and shadows to create believable 2D artwork that would have been drawn by an inker. We did a little on adding color into the scene, but in the next session we take a closer look at what the Toon and the Toon two-tone cameras do, and I'll let Jonathan finish off this session.
At this point I would start playing with colors and start getting the image to be more, fully cel-shaded looking. So I think next recording should be continuing this one, adding some adding colors. So playing around with the two-tone cam to do like color blending, and then converting it to more of like a cel-shaded look where you have solid colors with like a graduated color blend that responds to lighting, which is the way that I do it typically.
So I want to thank you, Jonathan, for your time again. I know your time is really valuable, and I appreciate everything you give to us, and look forward to talking to you next time.
Great, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Bye now.